Great. Welcome, everybody. And we're really excited to have today. We have HapagLloyds CEO Rolf Habben Jansen. Did I pronounce that right? Habben?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well done.
And we have a really fascinating discussion today. We're going to discuss their new network design and their partnership with Maersk, which is a logistics nerd in all of us should be really fascinating to see how they're transforming ocean logistics and really building a network that's I think genuinely innovative and new. I want to, of course, apologize. We had some technical difficulties in our standard webinar platform, but we are agile and nimble, and we're just going to go ahead and record this here on Microsoft Teams and share it out. I do have a brief legal note. Just keep in mind that all the information in this conversation is for general purposes only and may not be suited for your particular business requirement. And so with that, love to get Rolf a chance here. Maybe just to start with a brief overview. We have a few slides for you, but of your latest strategic initiatives, especially this Gemini Cooperation that you've announced and your overall kind of strategy for the next through the next few years.
Thank you, Ryan, and yeah, appreciate the invite and happy to talk to many of you. Would have indeed been better to do it a bit more interactive, but it is what it is. I think when you look at Hapag, we have, I think, a pretty clear strategy towards 2030. We call that to try and become the undisputed #1 for quality. I'd say our direction there very clear. From pure play, we go to pure play plus. That means that apart from liner shipping, we will also invest in adjacent activities like terminal and inland. Where do we want to play? We're going to continue to play in the liner industry and want to retain our position in roughly the top 5. How do we think we can win? That's by trying to become this undisputed #1 for quality, not only on the customer service side, where we measure that very much in the type of in NPS scores and things like that, but definitely also on the operational side. Also on the sustainability front, we have to make progress. We've committed ourselves to the Paris Agreement. That means that we have some ambitious targets, not only towards 2030, but also towards 2045, when we'd like to be carbon neutral. And then, of course, we need to make sure that we continue to perform also on unit costs, but also on financial results to be able to invest in the future. In that context, Gemini Cooperation for us will be a key enabler to deliver on that strategy, because it will bring us better schedule reliability, it will bring us a lot of connectivity, and it will also help us to become more sustainable. As everybody knows, that agreement has been signed earlier, and it will start in February 25, and that means that by that time we leave our partners in the alliance. What is it all about? If we flip one page, we've said our ambition is to deliver industry-leading schedule reliability. We believe that that is possible. We think that a punctuality promise to bring 90% of the ships on schedule and to deliver 80% of the boxes on time, that is possible. That's why the new network plays a key role. Here, I think that's a big difference also with the other networks, which in essence have a milk run type of principle, where you say, for argument's sake, take 6 ports in Asia, and then you take a bunch of ports on the US East Coast or in Europe. We use significantly fewer ports on both ends. That allows us to be more reliable. That also means, of course, that the hubs play an important role, but those hubs will, except 1 or 2, all be controlled by either Maersk or Hapag, and that means that will enable us to indeed deliver that network. Very balanced partnership between Hapag and Maersk, very much strategically aligned around delivering better operational quality, trying to make simple decisions and trying to come up with a network that indeed will offer that resilience that many people have been looking for. Next page, we've said it is, especially between Asia and Europe and India, it is a hub and spoke model. Why do we believe that will work? Well, look at the principles, efficient mainline rotations. As I mentioned, only 2 or 3 main ports per region, and that includes the hubs. Yeah? That means shorter round voyage times, more resilience, and also less or better ability to react on disruption. We control the hub terminals. That means that we will be able to deliver that high quality and high productivity that we need. That allows us to have shorter port stays, no congestion, and as in most of the locations, we have 2 or 3 terminals that are close by. If there is some disruption, we always have some contingency built in. We have a broad shuttle network, which are not feeders, but also shuttles that run from the main hubs to many of the main ports in Europe, but also in Asia. And of course, those connections are also synchronized, because that allows us then to be on par with the direct network, also when you look at transit time. Of course, we are in a slightly complex situation today, because when we started this, we all assumed that we would be able to go through Suez. If we look at the situation as we know it today, on the next page, we have to be prepared for 2 scenarios. One is a network around Suez. The other one is where we, for some services, still have to go around the Cape. We announced that network some days ago, where in a Suez case, we'll deploy about 300 ships across 57 services. If we go around the Cape, it will be 2 services more, and we'll also need some more ships simply because the routes that we need to cover are longer. We communicated that now in October we'll make a final call on which is the network that we will initially deploy. But of course, if the situation changes, we can always move a little bit. We can always switch between one and the other. I think that is a quick introduction, Ryan, from my side. Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrific. And actually, if we can go back one slide, I think it's a really great just to kind of have this visual of the map and the network and highlight really what is so different about this is, as you said, not having the milk runs where you stop at every port along the way. Each of those would introduce potential delays that can then cascade and build up. You mentioned your target of 90% schedule reliability. Like, for those maybe who don't have as much experience in the industry, 90% on time is how does that compare with where we are today as an industry? Not necessarily Hapag specific statistics, but what does your benchmark look like, and how much better is that?
I think when you look today at the industry, we have since for too long already been hovering between 50 and 70%. Today, the industry is at 55-ish. There have been times, I would say, when you go a bit further back, where sometimes we were between 70 and 80. But we do believe that with a network like this, we will be able to hit that 90%. Probably not on day one, because we need to phase in the network and we need to phase in the ships. But certainly somewhere in the course of 25, you will start seeing significantly higher schedule reliability in this network than we had before. And keep in mind that when you look at a network like this, it's not something that has never been done before, because hub and spoke is very normal in many industries. If you look at how people do air freight, I mean, if you ship from Shanghai to Hamburg, the plane does not go all the way to Hamburg, but it goes to Frankfurt, and from there it goes on a truck. And in a way, this is not all that different. And by disconnecting the shuttles at origin and destination from the mainliners, you just build a lot more resilience in the overall network.
Yeah, I mean, we're all of course familiar with the hub and spoke as passengers on airplanes too, and frankly, the containers care a lot less about getting transloaded than a passenger does, and it's pretty normal in the passenger world. The key though is that transshipment rather, is done efficiently and effectively in these hubs. So the hubs are in orange on this graph here. These become like the vital links in the network. Can you talk a little bit about the operation of those hubs? You said that they are going to be almost entirely run by either your company or Maersk. What is it about? How did you choose those particular ones? What is it about those, and how do you overcome that maybe resistance from historically people are worried about a transshipment meaning potential delays, and you're now saying, hey, no, actually that's the key to running this really fast on-time performance network?
I mean, I think, we had the skepticism ourselves as well when we started designing it. We knew that in principle, a hub and spoke network is more efficient because you have better asset utilization. And because in the end, with that, you can also bring down cost and you disconnect, as I said, origin destination movements from the mainliner. But it does require that the hubs really work well. I would say that when you look at the terminals that we have chosen in our network, that those are probably amongst the best that you will find in the industry. Also very important that our philosophy here is not so much that the terminal needs to maximize profit. No, the terminal needs to facilitate the network. So the terminal is there to support the network. And I believe that that's also quite an important point, because that also means that, in some of those cases, we'll probably overinvest a little bit and make sure that those capabilities are a bit better than one would think when you look purely at the volume that needs to be processed, because we need to make sure that if there is some kind of disruption, and we all know, that we will face disruption at some point in time, that we then have sufficient buffer, and contingency to continue to run the network with the reliability that we're aiming for.
Yeah. And you've got these shuttles, as you call them, and that's just a sort of a pendulum that's going back and forth. In the map here, you have Tokyo connecting to Shanghai. So is that the way that customers should think about that it's just going to run back and forth Tokyo to Shanghai all the time, rather than doing a milk run as maybe a feeder might do?
Exactly. I think the shuttles will typically have only 1 or 2 stops, and keep in mind that in many cases, these will still be pretty big ships that are 6,000 or 8,000 TEUs, and they will load. I mean, if you take the example on the left-hand side from Tanger to Antwerp or Le Havre, they will be in Tanger, they will load, they are empty in Tanger, they go full to Antwerp or Le Havre, they load back up and then go back to Tanger. That's a very simple rotation where not all that much can go wrong. And what will also be different is that for a place like Le Havre, for example, in France, which in most of the networks, whenever there is a problem, those are the type of ports that will be omitted. So in many cases, these type of ports will not see 50 sailings a year, but rather more 35 or 40. Then in our case, they will be there every week. So if you have a shipment that goes, say, from Tokyo, via Shanghai and Tanger to Le Havre, you will have a lot more certainty that that box comes on time, because the shuttle between Tokyo and Shanghai goes every week, and the same is the shuttle between Tanger and Le Havre, and it will actually wait for the ship, and as soon as it's there, we'll transload it in a way, put it on the ship, and start sailing.
Yeah, so it's super interesting. So in a current network, you'd be looking at, if you're in one of these smaller ports, saying, yeah, I've got a direct service, but in fact, your direct service may get first of all, it's not that direct, it's stopping so many times on the way. And second, it might get canceled if the ship is running late and they need to make up speed, they might just skip that port and go direct. So you're saying, hey, with this one, although you're making more stops, your container may switch ships, you're actually getting a much higher level of reliability out of the network.
I mean, I think in the end, it's fairly simple. In our case, we make 2 or 3 stops on each side, and that includes the hub. So the likelihood that you will have a lot of delay that you cannot catch up is not very high. Whereas if you have 6 stops in Asia and you have also 6 stops in Europe, we all know that then instead of having 6 or 4 places where it can go wrong, you have 12. And then the likelihood that something goes wrong and that it will then have a carry-on effect for the rest of the service is, of course, just a lot higher.
Yeah. And so the trade-off here, of course, is that you have more lifts, let's call it more transshipments. The containers are getting moved on and off ships more often. Like, what does that look like what are you forecasting on average, like a typical container would do, or how many more across the network would you expect as a result of the new design?
I mean, keep in mind that all liner companies transship quite a bit, because even those that would say that they do everything direct, they will very likely still transship anywhere between 25 and 35% of the boxes, just in a less structured way. We do that also in today's network. In future, the amount of cargo that gets transshipped moves up from today, say 35% of the network of the cargo to 45%. So it's not a landslide shift. And keep in mind that also when we discuss the transshipment and the role of the hubs, that's very important for export from Asia. It's really important on the Far East and Middle Eastern trade. But for example, when we look at the services that go to the US, I mean, the Trans-Pacific eastbound service after it leaves Asia is very similar to what it does today. It still goes from, say, Singapore to LA, or it still goes through Suez or around the Cape to New York.
Yeah. And so, okay, but that's interesting. It's 35 to 45%. So it's not a huge amount more transshipments, but it really sets up the network. I love this synchronized connections concept. I don't know. I'm here in the Bay Area in San Francisco where I live. There's like one BART is our subway system. There's one BART train that I know in MacArthur BART, it's called, where your train comes up and the other one's always sitting there waiting for you, and you can just walk across the aisle, walk across the platform to get on your other train. That's what we're talking about here, is how getting that level of synchronization so that although there is a transshipment, it's not, the box is not sitting there for days at a time. Like what goes into that kind of planning to be able to make sure that the ships are not waiting too long, and how do you make that decision of, is it just waiting until that there's only one or two other ships, wait till all the cargo has been moved over before it departs, or how does that work out?
I think the key here is that you need to do the planning quite far up front. I mean, in our case, if we start loading the box in Tokyo or in Shanghai, in this example, we will already book it through to Antwerp or Le Havre, and that means that the terminal in Tanger, in this case, will already know that that box is coming several weeks in advance, and that's also why they can plan then the shuttle that needs to move on. And I think in general, I think one of the things that we also see as we are preparing for go live, that we just need to pull planning forward, and we need to constantly update that. And that's, I believe, where you will also see that that's also why it will work in the end, because we'll have a pretty good idea 3 weeks before arrival what the boxes are that are actually coming. 2 weeks before, we know pretty much everything, and 1 week before, after that, there will be very few changes. And that means that, of course, then you can organize also the terminal to be fully prepared to handle everything. And you can ensure that the shuttles are there to then take the boxes and move them straight to the next port.
Yeah. And of course, the lifts cost money. The unloading, loading containers is not free. The customer shouldn't care about that. At the end of the day, they're paying you for a service door to door, and that's up to your network to figure out. But how do you internally, keep what can be done to keep those costs low to ultimately make the network more and more competitive? And is that an area of investment just to steadily? You mentioned over investing perhaps in the capabilities there, which implies may actually be higher costs for a period as you focus on quality. But presumably there's a roadmap then to make those really competitive, cost competitive over time.
I think in the end, this network will not be more expensive than the traditional networks that we have been running. And keep in mind that one of the real keys to that is that we will have on average much better asset utilization. If today you sail with a 24,000 TEU ship all the way from North China to Poland, there are very large stretches where that ship is half empty or even more than half empty. And of course, that's pretty inefficient. That's where we will be full more or less from the start, and certainly between the hubs. And as such, the average utilization of those ships is a lot better. That means you need fewer ships. And yes, we do a bit more transshipment, but as I said, we move it from 35 to 45%. But because the operations are also having a scale that we did not have before, you can reach much higher productivity, which means that unit cost remains very well under control.
Yeah, that asset utilization is a really interesting point. That in fact you'll have an effective sort of what you might call TEU kilometers, or you'll be able to actually move more boxes per year with the same number of ships in this network design. And I guess part of the concept there is like, well, ships that are sitting there unloading don't make money. They make money when they're moving. That's what you get paid to do, is move cargo. So that's part of the idea here is, hey, fewer port calls means less time sitting around, and then also going just between these main hubs means higher utilization, more cargo on the ship at any given time. So that's what is the effective increase in effective capacity that you can generate through this network design?
And we still need to see that, but we think that it's potentially quite significant. And as you say, it is in the end about how do you use the ship as it's moving around. But we also shouldn't forget that that other things become much simpler. I mean, to give you an example, if you have 6 ports in Asia and you have 6 ports in Europe, your stowage, for example, has in principle 6 times 6, so 36 combinations. Where in our case, where you have maybe 3 and 2, you have only 6 combinations. That means the stowage becomes a lot easier. That also means the loading and unloading becomes a lot easier. And that's also where you gain quite a bit of productivity. And of course, as the port calls also become bigger, you also gain some time. And that's why even with transshipment, we in many cases see that actually the transit times that we will be able to deliver, and then also with a high schedule reliability, will be very competitive compared to most of the direct networks.
Yeah, so say more about that stowage point. So the idea is here that because there's fewer combinations, you can just do a better job of loading the ship so that the right containers are on top to get unloaded, rather than having them buried deep underneath and then need to do more moves in order to get them out. Is that the way to think about that?
I mean, if you think about what happened in the whole industry over the last 15 to 20 years, then the ships have become a lot bigger. And of course, that means that things like stowage have become a lot more complex. Also because there are many more rules these days than there were probably 15 or 20 years ago. And not a lot has changed in the industry. And now we are starting to move to a different type of network, which actually makes the stowage, for example, fundamentally simpler, which is also needed with some of these very big ships. And as such, you will see many initiatives from Gemini to simplify processes and to simplify the way we work. And you will not only see that in stowage, but you'll also see it in the way we operate the services. And today, when you will look at a service from the Alliance, you could have a ship this week from Hapag, and next week from Yangming, the week after from ONE, and then one from HMM. In the cooperation that we will have with Maersk, you will see that the vast majority of the services is either operated by Maersk or by us, which means that the people that are working on it and the processes that you need to follow every single week will be the same. Also, that will help to create more stability, resilience, and reliability in the services.
So the idea is that the services would be sort of segregated. You'd have Hapag services and Maersk services. Obviously, you're partnered and you're co-selling, or you have the similar. You have your own commercial agreements, but you're partnered to go sell these services. But each one is operated relatively independently, so you get more efficiency. Is that the point there?
The idea is that you get, that you have every week the same process. Yeah. So on one of the services, you will have 12 sister ships from Hapag that have all exactly the same size, that have the same type of characteristics, that you also in terms of stowage have to do the same week in, week out. You have also the same people working on it week in, week out, and you do the same on the next service that's maybe operated by the blue ships. By doing that, you just take complexity out. And yes, there will also be services where, we have some Hapag ships and we have some Maersk ships. But then, even then, the way we will likely do it is if we have 6 and 6, we'll try to do 6 blue ships and then 6 Hapag ships and then again 6 blue ships, so that you don't need to change, even if it's only small things, processes and procedures every other week.
Yeah. I mean, you started off here saying the goal of the whole network is about quality, ultimately as measured by on-time performance, and that should yield customer satisfaction. It's a pretty incredible step change to go from 55%, which is sort of what we think the industry benchmark is for schedule reliability, up to 80 or 90%. Customers, we've shown over the years at Flexport that customers will pay more for that kind of reliability. Of course, we all know this is a highly competitive industry. Price really matters. You see people haggle over $50 every time. What is your estimate here? I mean, you don't want to come out and say, hey, we're going to be the most expensive. You're going to be price competitive. But of course, you're trying to build a premium brand and say, hey, if you value reliability, this is the network for you. How do you think about that and positioning the brand and be able to make sure you are able to earn a premium for this?
I think, we need to be competitive in the market, and as such, there is definitely a market price. What I also believe, though, that is if we consistently deliver 80 or 90% schedule reliability, that will allow customers to take some inventory out of their supply chain. Because with 50% schedule reliability, you need bigger buffers and you need more safety stock than if you have 80 or 90% schedule reliability. And of course, that's where there is potentially a win-win, where people may be willing to pay a little bit more for 80 or 90% schedule reliability, if that allows them to cut their safety stock with 1 or 2 weeks. And I think that's in the end where the trade-off needs to come. And it's up to us to first deliver on this, and to make sure that we can bring that reliability week in, week out, because only once people have that confidence and they see that we indeed deliver, they'll be able to take out some of the safety stock. And that, of course, makes in itself perfect sense. And then, yes, if you then have to choose between, a service where you get a lower and a higher schedule reliability, I think for many, the choice will be not so difficult.
Yeah, this is something we've got pretty good data to show this over the years that, there are some sort of, it's interesting, there's these faster ship services, but the ships don't go any faster. It's just purely what you're saying is they do direct calls. They don't make all the stops along the way, especially on Trans-Pacific eastbound, where Flexport's been a big seller of those types of services. So, and there's pretty clear evidence certain types of customers that value either working capital or just speed will pay extra for that kind of reliability, and it's reliability and speed. They're willing to pay extra for both. So I think that's pretty clear. And the more that you can quantify it, show them the data, make it objective instead of emotional. I think the industry can get full of emotion sometimes and people pointing fingers at each other. The more you can bring quality and define it with statistics and say, look, here's the data, we're objectively better. And probably the way that it works out for you is that there just becomes a lot more demand for your service if it's reliable. And then, over time, you have less space available and you're able to charge a premium because there's a huge amount of demand. So it's not even you coming to the market and say, hey, pay more for me. It's people saying, hey, I'll be willing to pay more if I can get some space on your ships.
Yeah, I think that's certainly also what we hope that will happen. I think we know very much that the ball at the moment is in our court, because we need to make sure that we deliver on the promises that we made. But we're also convinced that if we do, that there will definitely be sufficient demand for our services. And what is interesting is that I think that the journey that customers will go through is a little bit similar to what many of our people have gone through. When we first brought this network to our own teams, you also saw that a lot of people were skeptical and were like, that's going to be more transshipment, and is that going to work? And if you see how the mood today is, I think both at Maersk, but certainly also at Hapag, then people are really excited about what we can do, because as you learn more, you also understand better and better why it actually will work. And we still have to do it. And I think we're very well aware of that, and we're working very hard to be super well prepared for that and to make that transition as smooth as possible. But if you just look at the level of excitement that there is within our own teams, I think that's very encouraging, because that shows you that people really see why this.
Congrats for that. It's very bold and difficult. Your company has over a century of tradition, so it's not an easy thing to do to kind of drive that kind of change. It must be exciting to be able to put that through. Talk to us, one of the things that I think is another investment that you've made that's pretty interesting is putting GPS trackers on all these containers. These things kind of go nicely together because you're able to give people peace of mind. Hey, we may transship it. The network is different, but we're showing you these on-time performance and we're giving you real time. Hey, here's where your box is, so you can give people peace of mind. I always felt like that, for me, the analogy for that GPS tracker and just overall visibility is like Uber, where me personally, I would rather wait 15 minutes for an Uber where I had it on a GPS. I could see exactly when it's going to arrive at my house than I would if I wait 5 minutes for a taxi, but I have no idea where it is or when it's going to arrive. I mean, the peace of mind is pretty valuable. Were these two ideas meant to go in parallel, or are those two totally separate initiatives that just sort of happen to come along in similar timing?
I mean, it's not a total coincidence, because we think both of them fit to our strategy to try and become really good, not only in customer service, but also operations wise. And of course, you're right, they fit well together. We are also working on products that will be available next year, which will give people also live ETA data, when the boxes are supposed to arrive. And I think that's generally good news, because also that will help again to install some confidence on customers that we indeed can deliver on that promise. And also, once that box is, for example, at a transshipment hub, you can see where it is, and you will get a notification, or you will be able to see on the web when the thing will be loaded and when it's going to be arriving at the final port of discharge.
Yep. Yeah, it's great. We're looking forward to being able to pass that data through directly through our app to our customers. I guess last question. I know you have a hard stop here in a few minutes, so we'll let you get out of here on time for your flight. But love to double click a little bit on what you mentioned around the Red Sea and the Suez, and you said it was 300 ships are necessary to operate the network if you're able to go through the Suez, 340 if you have to continue to go around the Red Sea, which I'm assuming is the default. Maybe there's some breakthrough in the next, between now and when you start, but I'm assuming that's the default. So where do those ships come from, the difference of the 40 ships? Like, do you have to pull them off of different trades, or how does that work?
I mean, in the end, of course, it's 40 ships between us and Maersk, and
Right.
Keep in mind that if you add up the number of ships that both of us deploy together, you are very close to 1,000 ships. So in the end, if we have to find 40 within our combined fleet, and then we also take some extra from the market, if and when that would be needed, then of course you can find those. It's not impossible to find 40 ships, but it's also not easy because most of them, of course, were planned to be deployed somewhere else.
Yep. And then there's also I assume between the two companies a reasonably sized order book of new ships coming online, new builds. That those get added to this network, or those get put into other parts of the wider network as they new builds come in.
I think the answer to that is that it will be a bit of both. Yeah. Keep in mind that when you look at Hapag, we'll have around between 57 or 59 services that are connected to Gemini, but we have another 75 services in other parts of the world. So yes, of course, we still have other services as well, and we are both ordering, I guess, to renew our fleet and to also continue to grow with the market, but probably also not much faster than that. And as those ships come in, we'll bring them into our fleet where they fit best, and then we'll cascade other ships through the network. Yeah.
And then the last thing here, and we'll send you off, is you mentioned one of the other pillars of your strategy is sustainability. Talk to us a little bit about how this overlaps with the sustainability goals for the company, and what other things you think are going to be important to achieving those.
And I think in this case, there's probably two things that will really help us to become more sustainable. One is that I mentioned already earlier, we'll have better asset utilization, so we can use the ships more often to carry the same number of containers. That, of course, reduces emissions per container. The second thing is that because we will go through hubs with high productivity, we will gain some time there that will allow us also to sail a little bit slower. And of course, that also means that we can reduce emissions. So sailing slower is certainly one important lever to reduce emissions. The other one is to maximize asset utilization. Those two are definitely addressed via Gemini. In addition to that, we have an investment program of close to $1 billion to retrofit many of our ships, because with the newest technology, there's a lot that you can do to take another 5, 10, sometimes even a little bit more percentages of fuel consumption out. And the last thing, of course, is to look for green fuels, and that's where you'll see that basically all the new ships that we order have a dual fuel capability, whether that's then liquid gas, or whether that's methanol, or whether that's ammonia. In the end, it will be a mixture of those, and we'll also continue to retrofit some ships, as we, for example, I think we've issued an order earlier this year to retrofit 5 ships to methanol, and all of these things will help us to bring those emissions down and hopefully indeed get us to a net zero by 2045.
Yeah, wow, net zero. I mean, $1 billion of investment is not. That's pretty admirable, actually, to be able to put that kind of capital to work doing that. So we thank you. Hey, Rolf, I know, like I said, you got to go catch a flight. So thank you for making time for us today. Really appreciate this. I'm just, as a logistics nerd, network optimization guy, I'm just so fascinated by this. It must be a really fun project to have been worked on. I'm sure there's a little bit of anxiety still as you go into this, and you get some learning curves to come out, but it must be really, really exciting time to go work on such a network. And we're happy to be partnered with you guys, and looking forward to seeing those on-time performances that you're aiming for, and see if we can deliver that for on behalf of you. On behalf of our customers, you delivering that is super important. So thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.